Welcome to the Co-Host Bros Podcast, where we break down everything short-term rentals, entrepreneurship, and building a profitable hospitality business. Whether you're a host, investor, or property manager, we share real strategies, real insights, and real experiences to help you scale smarter and grow faster. Let's dive in.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Co-Host Bros Podcast. My name is Matt Codd. I'm here with Austin Spitz, and today we have the co-founder of Angel Host, Eduardo Mandri, in the house. What is going on, Eduardo?
Good. Happy to be here, guys. As I was mentioning before, from Montreal, a bit up north. Still spring here, still pretty cold. I guess down in Texas, you guys have much nicer weather now.
Yeah, we do. Actually, I'm gonna need a favor. I'm gonna need you to go get my AirPods from the guy that stole them from me in Vegas and took them to Canada. So if you could just head over there and get them for me. I think he's in Quebec, but I don't really know. I'd have to check the location. But
yeah, check the location. If they're in Vancouver, it's like a 5-day drive, so that might be a bit hard.
Perfect. That's the fee. No, I'm just kidding. What's going on with you, Austin? What's up, buddy?
Oh, not much, man. Happy to be here. Super excited for the guests. We're going to talk about revenue management, all that fun stuff. But man, I'm doing good. No complaints on my end. But yeah, let's hop right into it. So Eduardo, let's just give a little background for our listeners that don't know you. Tell us, first of all, how did you get into the space, and then tell us a little bit about your business.
Sure, absolutely, Matt. So, sorry, Austin. I did get into this business about 7-8 years ago. The reason is because I had a vacation rental property and was managing. Well, I had a property manager taking care of it, but I worked for a number of years at an airline, at Air Canada here up north, and I actually worked quite a bit in revenue management. So I knew what good revenue management could do for the revenue of an airline. And I figured, applying the same principles to managing vacation rental could actually get me higher revenues. But at the time, my property manager was like, listen, buddy, we take care of cleaning, maintenance, answering to guests 24 hours a day. And now you want me to start doing dynamic pricing and making changes to your prices day in and day out. I just don't have the bandwidth. And that's where, it was a eureka moment. I was like, oh, there could be something here. I've started many companies in my lifetime. This is actually the 7th one that I start. So I'm always looking for opportunities where I see that there's a need in the market. And I realized that the do-it-for-you revenue management, there was an opportunity there. There were technologies out there, but sometimes they're a little bit hard to understand, hard to use. I figured if I put together a team of professionals that all they do day in and day out is think about revenue management and mathematics and whatnot, they can do pretty well. And that's how this thing started. The first client was my own property and the property management company that was working with me. But very quick after that, more and more property management companies started reaching out to us saying, hey, I heard what you did for these guys. Can you also help us out? So we started adding a lot of properties in Florida. Orlando was a big market for us. Then in Texas, then California, Canada, of course, Mexico, the Caribbean, and then we went to Europe. So we're now at over 2,000 properties that we manage worldwide, or we help manage, because we're not the property manager company per se. We're just helping, managers take care of all the listing optimization and revenue management of the properties.
I gotcha. So your services include specifically like dynamic pricing and listing optimization as well. Is that kind of like the package that you guys sell? I'm just trying to get a better gauge, like for our listeners, of what it is specifically that the services you guys provide.
Yeah, sure. So I'm sure most of your listeners must have, maybe they're already using or have heard of technologies like Price Labs or Wheelhouse, for dynamic pricing. There's some other tools for listing optimization. We basically use those tools, to they're part of the tech stack that we use to provide the service that we provide. And we find those tools extremely useful. we just find them a bit cumbersome, and we find that having them in the hands of experts can always yield better results for you. So we basically, our offer to our clients is like, listen, let us take over the pricing decisions. Let us take over your listing optimization, and you'll see a 10, 20, 30, 40% increase in your revenues. You can outsource this to us, and you can focus on growing your client base. You can focus on other aspects of your business. That's essentially what we've done so far. And it's been a good ride. It's been 6 years already. And like I said, we're now operating in about 51 cities around the world, and we just have a very clear methodology on how to maximize revenues.
Do you use a combination of softwares like Price Labs and Wheelhouse, or are you guys more geared towards one specific revenue management software? How do you do that? Because I've used Price Labs, I've used Wheelhouse. Me personally, I prefer Price Labs. I guess I'm just more used to it. But there's capabilities in Wheelhouse too, I guess. What do you guys use both, or are you just utilize one of them?
We have experience with both, but we have decided to focus primarily on Price Labs. So becoming power users of Price Labs. So it's a pretty powerful tool. But just like Excel, you can have people doing just simple additions with an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can do a lot of really complicated stuff with it. The same with Price Labs, right? You can use it at the basic level and get good results out of it, or you can use it at a very advanced level and making additional tweaks and adjustments that a professional revenue manager can only look into, and then get better results. So yes, Austin, we use that as part of our tech stack. We use Price Labs, we use information from key data, and we have built our own proprietary technology. So we actually don't use Price Labs the way you would use it. You would use it by logging into Price Labs and working directly from there. We do partly of that, but we also connect to the API, download all the data that we need, put it into our own systems, and in order to do all the additional configurations that we need to do.
Yeah, so that's awesome. It makes me think, like, for our listeners, let's say the bulk a bit of our audience is property managers. So in your history, like, when do you think is the optimal time for someone to entertain using a revenue manager? Like, let's be realistic here. If you have one listing, like, just set up Price Labs on your own. It's not going to be worth the time, the trouble, the headache to onboard with a revenue manager. Like, it's just not. But like at scale, what range do you think of properties is ideal to start thinking like, hey, this would be good to outsource. I don't have to DIY it anymore. Like maybe 10 listings, 30 listings. Like when should you entertain? Like, hey, I'd like to pay a revenue manager to get this off of my plate.
Right. I would say, like you said, if you have one listing and that's all you do, then you have plenty of time to look into your listing and tweak the prices as much as you want. I think once you start hitting 4 or 5, you start realizing that there's not enough hours in the day for you to take care of cleaning, maintenance, owners, relationships, and also take care of proper revenue management. So most of our clients fall within the range of about 5 to 6 properties up to, I would say, about 100, 120. Once you get over 100 properties, you're at the volume that you would normally look to hire your own team of specialists, right? You're no longer doing this yourself. So that's our sweet spot. Anybody that has from 5 to 100, it's really worth their time. It's really worth the investment. Past 100, we do have a few clients that have 120, 150 properties, and that's because they want to compare how we perform versus their internal team type of thing, or just to have a second set of eyes looking at their numbers. But I would say that's a sweet spot, right? But like you said, if you only have one, we do have actually quite a few hosts, as clients that just have one property and they see that we can increase their revenues quite substantially. So they're like, okay, why not? And we'll have more time to dedicate to other things, family, friends, or just a lot of people that have one property is a side hustle. So they usually are quite busy with other things. So they like the help that they can get, when someone takes over all the pricing decisions.
Yeah, we recently brought revenue management in house, hired somebody specifically to only do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess one of the questions I had was like, previously we did have a revenue manager, and I think one of the not that they did anything wrong or anything like that, but one of the issues you had was like them not knowing our specific market.
Mhm.
So they're managing, they're managing all these other property managers, and they do a good job. They're really good at using Wheelhouse Price. I think we were Wheelhouse. They're really good at using the software and accommodating to our needs. But the problem was is that they didn't necessarily know our market specifically well enough as compared to other markets, because every market is obviously different. I'm curious as to how do you do that if you're a revenue manager in your specific market. I say, hey, I've got 65 listings. I want to work with you. Um, how do you know? How are you going to learn my market? Or does that question kind of make sense?
It does. And the answer is we work together with our clients to get a good understanding of the specific market. And hey, we live in Austin and we have the Formula One Grand Prix once a year, and that's a big event for us. Or, we have this food festival or whatever it is. So we do pay attention to those things. The advantage, Austin, is that there is so much data available that irrespective of whether you're in a mountain destination, a ski resort, or just some place off the beaten, very far away, chances are we have the data required to do proper property management, which combined with, regular conversations with our clients, our revenue managers start getting very quickly informed of the specifics of the market that you're in. So it doesn't really take them long, but we do pay attention to those things, right? Because again, data gives you one story, but if you know your area and you know that you have the last cottage available for Christmas and you know that everybody wants to go there, you can get an extra 40-50% of revenue. So that's the type of things that sometimes the revenue management system won't give you, right? It will increase the prices a little bit, but not as much as it should. And that's where the knowledge of a revenue manager comes into play. And that's why it's important for the revenue manager to have that kickoff call with the property the property manager that understands the local market. So it's a combination of both, Austin, at the end of the day,
Makes sense.
Yeah. And the thing is that there's so much data, and I mean, maybe you love math, and you love data, and you get a kick out of going into Excel and downloading spreadsheets, and some people do. I mean, the revenue managers in my team love doing that, and you should see how their eyes light up, anytime they talk about numbers. But not everybody's like that, some people struggle a little bit more with numbers, and that's where getting some professional help can make a difference between having a year where you sold $50,000 or $70,000, right, for a property. So it just makes sense.
I think mine and Austin's love language is money. We like money.
Absolutely.
So since you're probably good with Richie over at Price Labs, you could tell him to turn on the dynamic pricing for single day for hospitable. That'd be great. Just tell him to go ahead and get that done for us, because I need to do that.
I'll let him know.
So yeah, let him know. I'm sure you guys are tight. You got to be tight at this point. So you should be giving a good volume discount.
Yeah.
So it's taken you 6 years so far. You've been doing this for 6 years, and you're the co-founder, one of the co-founders. And so how many listings are you guys managing right now?
Over 2,000 now. We have 2,000, and I would say about 40% of that, maybe almost 50%, is in the U.S. The rest it's outside, different countries. Mostly vacation rental destinations, whether it's in Mexico, Cancun, Playa del Carmen, Puerto Vallarta, all those places. The Caribbean, very important market for us, whether it's Turks and Caicos, Barbados, Bahamas, and Europe. Recently, we made some good inroads into the UK, Spain, and the UK and Spain mostly. And we're lucky to have some bilingual revenue managers in our team. Some of them speak Italian, some of them speak Spanish. So that allows us to go into some international markets, which it's quite interesting. And at the end of the day, it's interesting because whether you're doing revenue management for properties in Paris, or you're doing it for property in Mexico or in Austin, the principles are the same. You have to base your decisions on data. You have to look at market data. And something that most people oversee is you have to look at the data that you get from your own listings, right? Maybe you don't have a problem with pricing. Maybe you have a problem with click-through rate. Maybe it's all about just changing those images or changing the title or changing something else. That is what's preventing you from getting a booking, not necessarily having poor revenue management practices, right? So yeah, but answering your question, a bit over 2,000 listings.
So how many revenue managers are you running with 2,000 listings right now?
We have a team of 4 full-time revenue managers, but supported by a team of 12 listing specialists and supported by a team of 3 IT specialists and some data analysts. So yes, the revenue managers that you will get on a call with, there's 4 of them, but they're supported by a very large team of people and specialists that are doing a lot of the work for them. They're doing more the value-added work more than the day-to-day.
Well, that's perfect because I'm like a lawyer, so I'm like leading into my question. So the reason I ask those questions is because I want to know, how difficult was it for you to build this business up to 2,000 listings and it sounded about 32 employees over 6 years? How difficult was this? Like, what was the most challenging part of that? And, because everybody's trying to build businesses, right? People we're talking to out there are building businesses, whether it be co-host business, property management business, revenue management business, so on and so forth, design, whatever, setup. So how difficult was it for you to build it to that point?
I mean, like every other business, difficult. I mean, when we got started in 2019, I remember we started to do quite well, and then 2020 hit and COVID hit. And other than the Orlando market, every other market was closed. So we lost most of our reservations. And back then we were charging a percentage of bookings, so our revenues went down to 0. I think after that, past COVID, the biggest challenge is always finding the right people, right? Because I have to rely on good revenue managers and good listing optimization people. So my role as the leader of the company is just to find the right talent, keep them happy, keep them motivated, keep them hungry. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge. The second biggest challenge, of course, is we're dealing with a world where there's a lot of numbers involved. And once again, people don't like numbers. So when you try to explain to someone why they have to lower a rate or make some changes, you're always going to get pushback. Like, what do you mean selling at $300 a night? My neighbor sells at $500. Really? Your neighbor sells it. Are you sure they rent at $500? Well, yeah, that's what they told me over the poker game, that he's renting at $500. Well, maybe he got a couple of bookings at $500, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily consistently booking at that rate. So, always fighting that, those anecdotes from people saying, oh, I think I can do more. I heard someone doing better, and trying to prove with data that we're making the right decisions. That has been our biggest challenge, growing as a company, to always demonstrate things with data. And with the right reports. So it hasn't been smooth sailing, but now we're at the point that we have a very good team. We have a nice critical mass, but it's taken us 6, almost 7 years to get there, Matt. So it's not, it doesn't happen overnight.
So it was growing pains and people problems is the hardest thing. And I feel like that is the hardest thing with most businesses too. And just so everybody knows, the neighbor is full of shit. 95% of people that talk about money are lying. I'm just saying, when you're hanging out with, oh yeah, I book it for this much all the time. Yeah, no, you don't. So there's that. So
exactly.
As far, I mean, it's true. I mean, you'd be like, the only time people don't lie about shit is when they get their tax return. Otherwise, they're like, they have no problem telling you the tax return coming. Yep. But so you guys do listing optimization with your pricing strategy, which makes sense because obviously you need one without, you can't have one without the other. So for your listing optimization, what kind of tools are you guys using for that? And are you only, I believe only most optimization data is pretty much Airbnb, but Verbo kind of follows a little bit. Yeah. But So what are you guys using?
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge because the optimization data, knowing how many views you've got or the click-through rate or the conversion rate, a few people know about this, but it's the type of data that is not exposed through the API. Like we have a very close relationship with Airbnb, and they invited us actually to connect to their API, and we're like, good. Are we going to be able to get all the metrics from the insight section? And they're like, sorry, that's not available through the API. So that's why Price Labs and all these companies, if you ask them, can you show me something about listing optimization, they're going to tell you, sorry, we don't have that information. And it's because the only way to get that data is by logging in with a co-host account and doing good old screen scraping, right? So that's what we do. We actually have some screen scraping robots programmed to go into all of our clients' accounts and download all the information on click-through rates, conversion rates, impressions, views, and all of that. And we've been using AI quite extensively nowadays. So to give you an example for listing optimization, we're going to download that data from Airbnb, and Verbo has some of it as well, and Booking.com as well. Then we're also going to download all the information from your listing and all of your guest reviews. And then we're going to make sure that your entire listing is consistent with what the guests want and what the guests are looking for, right? And to make sure with AI that if we see that your picture has a jacuzzi, but you don't mention it in your amenities, that it's actually mentioned. And if most guests are saying that they love the fact that the view is incredible and it's an amazing place for families or for parties or for whatever, we do mention that in the titles and everything else. So we get this information, unfortunately, in a pretty manual way, by scraping the inside section of Airbnb. But nowadays, there's simply no other way because neither Airbnb nor Verbo expose that information through their API. So that's the only way around it. And when you're a host and you have 50, 60 listings, it's a bit of a pain in the butt, to go into each one of them and manually download that information. Just takes forever. And that's where, for us investing in the technology to download this information automatically, pays off. And it really helps us. I'm wondering, how do you do it, Austin? I mean, you mentioned you have, do you download those metrics or how does your team handle that?
In regards to like the revenue manager in-house, we just started rolling out with it, and honestly, I'm not even involved that much in part of the business. My partners, they kind of handle that. I just kind of provide a little bit of market insight of like, hey, this house might be priced too high, or change the median on this, and I'll go select certain listings that I know might be off. So I just kind of just do like a general overview and kind of like light audit, but I'm not that involved in that day to day of the revenue management.
Good. It's a bit of a pain, so good that you're not looking into that.
It's not my genius zone, right? It's not like what my partners want me to do, and it's just not what I'm good at. So it's like you mentioned in the beginning, like you have your revenue management team, and you see like their eyes light up when they start talking about data and Excel sheets and numbers and getting bookings and the optimal price to get it booked at and occupancy and stuff like that. And that component of this business is just not my favorite, but I understand how critical and how crucial it is to the health of your business, right?
Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, Matt, to answer your question, that's how we do it. We download all that data and then you have to keep it in some sort of CRM so that you can keep track of how, if you change the picture, did it do something? Did it increase your click-through rate? Did it actually decrease your click-through rate? You change the title. Did it make a difference? So we try to keep an eye on all those things too. Like I said before, sometimes your listing might be not doing well, not because your price is wrong, but because the listing is not right. And before lowering the price, I think lowering the price should always be your last line of defense. You always have to make sure that your listing is perfectly well optimized, and if everything is well structured, well configured, then of course pricing makes also very important, makes a difference.
I track mine on Rank Breeze, but
yeah.
So Have you heard the news with IntelliHost recently?
I've heard. I just got an email this morning from one of my clients panicking, saying that IntelliHost had been banned from Airbnb or something. I really have no. I don't know much about it.
for for scraping data. So I was going to ask. My next question was: are you concerned about being banned from Airbnb
Well,
for
we have a
scraping?
really close relationship with them. We've actually been informing them of everything that we are obtaining from our accounts. You know, they are very much aware of exactly what we are doing. So I guess there must be a limit to how much you can scrape. You know, probably.
I think it was the way they were connected. IntelliHost came out with something else, saying they need to work on a new fix or something to connect it. But yeah, a lot of people got emails that IntelliHost is banned, and I was just curious if, I mean, since you were saying that, I was just curious if you guys were concerned with that. But if you talk to Airbnb all the
I
time, then
guess
there's
not.
probably no
I'm
concern.
not aware of exactly how IntelliHost, how much they're scraping, but any system, if you start scraping too much, they will basically flag you from using too much of their CPUs, right? You're just like, they're like, wait a second, we have these huge spikes of volume. Uh, an Airbnb won't like that. No company will like that. So we try to be very respectful, you know, in that sense, and we don't go in and download like a million data points. We don't need a million data points. We just need to know what's your click-through rate, what's your, you know, your impression rate, and that's about it. I think because IntelliHost was trying to do something with the views that you have, like how many views you have for a particular day, 3 days from now, 4 days from now, 5 days from now, and then they do that. They scrape that information the next day for today, tomorrow, 2 days from now, 3 days from now. I think the volume of scraping might not, now that you're telling me that, it must have been the volume of scraping just to be, you know, off the charts. And I'm sure Airbnb didn't like that.
I'm sure
Yeah,
they didn't.
yeah. This
So what's the ultimate goal with Angel Host? Is there like a limit on how big you want it to be, or is there like an exit strategy? What is the plan? Do you have a plan, or are you just going until you feel like not going anymore?
that's kind of how it is, Matt. I've been lucky to, I sold my previous two companies, and I had a very, uh, you know, I didn't have a very clear exit strategy when I started them. I just wanted to create value, create something valuable, and ultimately someone came and said, "Hey, we love what you did. We'd like to incorporate that into our business," and that's how, you know, I sold my previous two companies. So I've never created something with the intent of necessarily selling it. I want it to be profitable. I'm like you, Matt. You know, we like revenues, we like profits. Of course, that's the only way to keep a company healthy. But at the same time, we're not necessarily building this with the objective of let's sell to X or Y or Z, because sometimes you can just end up being disappointed, right? You just have to create something that you enjoy. I personally love numbers. I love what we're doing. I love my team. So as long as we're having fun, I'm good doing this for the next 20 years, right? So, and I think that's and of course if the money is there, which has to be there in order to continue thriving, you know, then all is good. But yeah, um, exits can happen. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you think you have a good exit, and then things turn out the other way. What was the company that Vacasa bought right before they went public? They must have been very happy about it. Was it V-Trips or someone else?
Oh, maybe.
Anyhow,
I think Kasako just merged with
yeah,
them just
yeah,
now
yeah.
recently. What I
But I
heard.
remember I remember that story because the owners were obviously super happy because Vacasa was buying them at a super good valuation, with the expectation that Vacasa was going to go public at 1.5 billion, $4 billion valuation. And I think Vacasa's valuation now is like 200 million, right? So whoever exited by selling to Vacasa was happy at the beginning, was quite unhappy at the end. So I don't like building businesses with the idea of necessarily exiting. I try to build solid things that can stand on their own for many years to come. And if there's an exit, great. If there's not, as long as it's profitable, you know, everyone's happy. Yeah.
And so on. Austin, you're on mute, bud.
I'm just sitting here talking to myself and nobody can hear me. My bad. But
Earth to
no, I was
Austin.
gonna Yeah, my bad. I was gonna say, I love that point of view, and you're just building a sustainable business, like just a profitable business that provides value. But let's pivot. Let's provide some value for our listeners.
Mhm.
So let's just say, what are like what's the biggest mistakes that you see hosts making in regards to, let's either say, dynamic pricing or listing optimization, or maybe one of each? Like, what's some issue, like some low hanging fruit that you see people or your reps see people doing incorrectly that they could fix maybe today to help their
Perfect.
business?
So when it comes to pricing, the number one mistake people make is setting their base price too high. Setting their base price too high. Because then what's going to happen is if they make a mistake and they set it too high, they're going to get, first of all, less click-through rate, less impressions, and therefore less bookings. And guess what? When you get less bookings, and this is what I talk to a bit in all the conferences that I talk, Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, they have tens of thousands of listings to show for any given result. Any given search, they have tens of thousands of listings to show. What are they going to show? Are they going to show the listing that books or the one that doesn't usually book? Well, they're going to show the thing that books the most. So if you want to be in good terms with Airbnb, especially when you launch your listing, don't be afraid to go in at a bit of a lower price, even if it means you're going to get more reservations. And as you start getting the volume, you can start increasing your prices. But don't get too greedy from the get-go, Just let it go. Let go those reservations at a low rate at the beginning. It's not the end of the world. You're playing for the long run, not just, for those 2 or 3 bookings. And then we see those virtuous circles happening, because then you start getting more bookings. And if you get a good service, you get good ratings. And then that's the moment where you can start increasing your rates. And you have to be quick, right? Sometimes there's more competition. So you have to be nimble. You have to be also humble. Don't always think that your property is the best one in the block. There's always someone that might be a little bit better. So pricing too high, I think, is the number one mistake that we see hosts making. And if I may say also, as another very important thing for everyone listening to please check this, is minimum length of stay. You can't imagine how many times hosts have, let's say you have a minimum 2-night stay. That's good. But they have the same 2-night stay for the Labor Day weekend. They have the same 2-night stay for Thanksgiving weekend. And they have the same 2-night stay for Christmas because they forgot to change it, right? So, hey, right now, if someone wants to book my Thanksgiving weekend, I have a 5-day minimum, right? So that way, if I get a booking, I'm going to get it for 5 nights. If I get closer to Thanksgiving and I still haven't rented for 5 nights, then I can lower that minimum night stay to 2 nights or 3 nights. So dynamic minimum stays are super important, and it's so often not looked after by hosts. It's one of those things that you set it up, you forget it, and then you realize only when you get that booking for 2 nights for Christmas, you're like, damn, I got those 2 days blocked, and now I'm not going to be able to book the rest of the week, right? And when it comes to listing optimization, the number one mistake we see time and time again is just in the picture selection. It's just horrendous how some people put their listings with 5 pictures of the same living room in the first 5 pictures, where, the first 5 pictures is your chance to showcase how your property is. And that's going to affect your click-through rate, and that's going to hurt your chances of conversion. So I would say those are some low-hanging fruit, things that are very easy to change. Of course, it's important for everyone to know that the number one thing that will affect your conversion and will affect your results is your guest rating, right? If you have high guest ratings, you will be displayed more often. We actually did an analysis, a very cool analysis. We ran, I think it was like 50,000 searches on Airbnb, and we compiled the data to figure out who's showing up on the first page. What characteristics can we find from people showing up on first page? And 80% of the listings that show up on the first page are guest favorites, meaning they have ratings of 4.9 or more. So if you want your best chance of showing up on the first page of Airbnb, be a guest favorite, even more important than Superhost, by the way. We saw way more often guest favorites than Superhosts. So that's why we have to be, as hosts, completely obsessed with ratings. And that's, again, one of the points where I always tell hosts, listen, if you have a difficult client, the client will eventually go away and you'll forget them, but your ratings will remain. So be nice even when you know that you should not be nice to a guest. Just offer them something to just be happy. It's completely unfair, I know. You did everything right and they're complaining about the one little thing that was off. Well, it's better to just give them a small discount or give them something, swallow that pill, and don't risk getting a bad rating. And if you get a bad rating, by the way, you can always contest that with Airbnb. That's also something that few people know. If you write a good letter to Airbnb explaining why the guest did not respect your rules or their review does not comply with the Airbnb policies, then you have a chance. You have a 20-30% chance of that bad review to be removed. And we actually do get some bad reviews removed on behalf of our clients. So yeah, I think those are some things that I could share. One trick that I like to share also with anytime I speak at conferences is that Airbnb has a very comprehensive set of terms and conditions, and sometimes what you can do is actually literally go into ChatGPT, copy paste the bad review that you got, and ask ChatGPT to evaluate it in light of the terms and conditions from Airbnb, and to actually build your case as to why that review should be removed. And believe me, ChatGPT is going to craft a very nice looking email, right, that you can submit, and at least that's going to increase your chances of getting a bad review removed when the bad review was unjustly left, right? So yeah, I think I'm talking too much.
Yeah, so yeah, no, that was great. That was tremendously valuable. I wrote down a few notes to follow up with our team to make sure we're doing that. What one of the questions that I had though, when you're saying guest favorites, does that mean that they hearted the listing, or is that one of those little trophies that they put on the listing and says one of guest favorites? So you're saying like favoriting the listing with the
No,
heart, or are you saying in regards to listing optimization, it's that little trophy that says whatever top 5% listing guest favorite.
exactly.
Which one is it? Or
It's the
both,
part of that
maybe.
it's the badge that Airbnb gives you.
Okay, so because I know that there used to be like these things in Facebook where people would say, "Go heart my listing" or whatever, and I don't really do that anymore. But I don't know, is that still a metric they track? Kind of. Have you seen that where they're like, because you're on Facebook go crazy, like, please heart my listing, and it's like, well, does that even
I
do
think that's
anything?
one of those things that no one can tell for sure. No one can tell for sure, because the reality is
Sure.
that no one can tell for sure how many times a listing has been added into favorites. You can know for your own listings, but you cannot know at large. So I find that in our industry, Austin, there's all of this, people that tell you, oh yeah, if you change your pictures every 15 minutes, that's going to make a difference. Well, that's anecdotal, right? We don't have any hard data to prove that. What I can prove is I can do searches on Airbnb and I can see what comes up, right? And I can understand the algorithm based on the results that the algorithm is giving. Then I can tell for sure that yes, we have a certain number of results that I'm actually just trying to pull up here on my screen. Maybe I can share with you the results from that study so that you can see exactly what I mean by that. So let me just pull this up and I'll show you the guest favorite. And this is an interesting slide. So let me see if I can do this. I've never shared a slide here using this system. So let's just
Should be on the bottom. It should just say present or
share my
invite.
screen. Share screen, allow, and so the screen. Perfect.
So while you're figuring that out, we'll run down your list because I thought that was pretty valuable. So the big mistakes were in regards to dynamic pricing were minimum length of stay, especially in regards to holidays. So make sure you have that dialed in. Um, Too high of a base price on the listing. That one's interesting to me too because I like how you said don't be greedy because if you go with a little more conservatively on the base price, you're going to go ahead and get that booking. And then the algorithm time might pass and it's going to taper down to that lower price anyways, but you would have had your calendar full and that would have favored the algorithm in the first place. So yeah, I like that. So lower base price. And then in regards to listing optimization, it was pictures, reviews, and guest favorites, meaning the
Right.
trophy tab, right? So yeah, I just wanted to run down that because I think just those little low hanging fruits are things that people can implement today to impact their business. So I think
Right.
that's awesome. But yeah, go
Yeah,
for it if you got your
it
screen
does,
ready.
is it working? Okay, beautiful.
Yeah,
It is now.
but you might have most of our listeners are on Spotify and stuff like that, and
No
I don't think we
worries.
have like screen sharing, so
I'll just explain. Yeah,
you might have to
absolutely.
annotate.
I'll
Yeah,
share
there you
with
go.
you.
At some point, we'll get the recordings on YouTube eventually. As soon as we get
No worries, no worries. So listen,
editor.
what I'm sharing on my screen is, and this information actually it was provided to us by Airbnb. This is the percentage of listings that have a certain rating. And as the screen shows you, 94% of the listings have a rating of a 4.5. And when Airbnb came up with this thing saying, hey, if you want to be a guest favorite, you have to have over 4.9. And people were like, are they crazy? Who has 4.9? Well, it turns out that 25% of all listings on Airbnb have a rating of over 4.9. So that's why, with so many listings, why would they give that badge to anybody else, right? So what we did is we ran all this results. This is, for example, for a search in Miami, and we actually saw that 70% of all the listings that would display on the first 100 results were having a rating of 4.7. And when you look at the first page, 85% of the results on the first page, 85% have a rating of over 4.7. So yes, if you have 4.5, 4.6, you might show up, but you're going to show up way less often than if you have 4.7 or more. So with our clients, we always tell them aim for that 4.7 or higher. Anything under that, you will be in trouble. And basically, this is the other study that we did. Like when it comes to when you do a search for, let's say, for Thanksgiving Day, and you do search after search after search, you're going to realize that almost 70% of all the listings that show up on that first page are actually guest favorites. So, again, it all comes down to ratings. And why wouldn't Airbnb display mostly guest favorites? They're the ones that give them the least amount of trouble, right? They're the ones that they actually announced on their SEC release that since they have given preference to guest favorites and they have started on listing anybody under 4.3, guess what? They have less calls to their customer center, right? They have less issues themselves. The people are happy using Airbnb. So why wouldn't they? So at the end of the day, in my view, there's no shortcuts, to be there at the top. You have to have good pricing. You have to have good listing. You have to give good service. That's the basis of it, right? And that's what's going to make you successful running, a short-term rental business.
I think I think that presentation is powerful. I'm sure there's more pages to that. I would love that presentation to be able to pitch it to my potential clients, just to say, hey, this is why you need good reviews, blah blah, which is pretty crazy. I think guest favorite is great. I have it on all my listings, but so kind of gear into if I lost my train of thought. Hold on. Okay, yeah, I know Austin's smiling. I lost it, Austin.
Yeah, no
All right.
worries.
And I lost it. Do you have it, Austin? Do you have it for me? Because I lost it. If not,
I don't know, man. Anything else? Anything you want to let our listeners know, Eduardo? Anything about IntelliHost that we haven't covered yet?
you
Anything
mean Angel
about building your
Host
business?
IntelliHost,
What did I
those are the
say?
guys that just got.
and Telehost?
Oh yeah, well we were talking about them anyways,
Right,
and then
right,
I
right.
see
The
your
competition.
background there, Angel Host. But yeah, anything we haven't talked about, Angel Host or anything like that?
No, really.
Anything you want to cover?
Listen, if anybody wants to know how their listing is doing, we do have this free tool on our website where, people can submit one of their listings, and using AI, and it's a custom built AI that we have. We evaluate the entire listing, and we give you like what we call the listing IQ report, and we're going to tell you on a rating from 0 to 100 just how good or how bad your listing is and what are the areas of opportunity. So that's something that if the listeners want to check it out, just go to myangelhost.com, and we have that listing IQ report under resources that you can get for free. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, there's a lot of little things that hosts can do and should pay attention to in order to be better. Prizes is obviously very important. If you have the time and the energy and the commitment to do it by yourself, kudos to you, and that's terrific. Who am I to tell people that they should always get professional help? Like, I think we all know what we're good at and what we're lacking. So I think my philosophy is like same with my team. I'm good at certain things and I'm bad for most things. So I hire a lot of really smart people to help me with all of the things that I'm not good at.
Yeah, in any business, there's a level that you reach, and it's just like everything just
Mhm.
becomes too much, right? Like just you can do everything at 10 listings, but once you get to know 30 listings, you got to start figuring out what it is you're not good at, delegating that to someone else. So I'm sure you noticed that
Yeah,
in building
absolutely,
your business as well,
absolutely.
right?
And Matt, it'll be my pleasure to send you this presentation. It's actually one of the we gave it at a conference in the U.S. Not long ago. So if that helps you, happy to share it with you, and anybody else listening. You can just reach out to me, and I'll be happy to share all of those slides, and you can see what drives that positioning on Airbnb and the different platforms.
Yeah, it'd be cool to check
So
out. You have my email, so I
Absolutely.
sent you email earlier.
So, one more thing about the free resource that you have on your website. They plug in their listing, and what specific metrics? And sorry if this is repetitive. What are the specific metrics that people are going to see? Is it listing optimization stuff? Is it related to their pricing? What is it that if somebody listens to this episode and they're like, okay, I'm going to go check it out. I'm going to plug my listing in there. What
Yeah,
little
I'm trying
what's the
to also
value going to
share
be
my
there?
screen with one of those so that I can actually share with you the. But while I load my screen, I'll let you know. We basically are gonna like I said, we download all of the information from your listing, and we basically down all of that data, and then we analyze it and we compare it to the thousands of listings that we have managed, and that we currently manage to see how is it doing? So I want to just share with you the one of the reports that we actually sent to one of our clients just a few days ago. So let me try to share my screen once again, and because people cannot see necessarily the screen, I'll just walk you through it quickly. So share screen, allow, and how does this work? It's saying that it's not allowed.
It'll pop up for me in a minute, and then I'll click it. It should. While you're doing that, what's your biggest client win?
Can you say it again?
What is your biggest client
In
win?
terms of increase of revenue, it's we've seen that clients that we've seen 40-50% jump in revenues. So when they're not properly
Wow.
optimized, when you have a good operation running, we should still be able to see a 15%, 20% is reasonable, and let me see, I have it right here. Can you see my screen now? Perfect. So the listing IQ report,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
we if you give us access to your Airbnb account, we'll be able to download this data, your impression rate, your click-through rate, and your conversion rate. But if not, just, you will immediately receive evaluation of, how are you doing with the rest of your badges, superhost, guest favorite, where do you stand? And then we look at your title, and whether your title is good or not, and what would be other titles that we would recommend based on what your guests are saying. Not based on what we think is best, but based on best practices, which is listen to what the guests say and focus that on your title. You're going to get an analysis of your summary and your description, what's right, what's wrong. You're going to get an analysis of the pictures. Do you have enough pictures? Too many? Too few? Did you place the captions on them? Is there anything else that you should be looking into? We're going to look at amenities. We know which amenities do make a difference in terms of ranking. So we're going to make sure to point out the ones that you don't have and that you should have. This is a common mistake that hosts make. Sometimes they have a barbecue. They just don't mention it. They didn't click on the box that said that they had a barbecue. So when someone, applies a filter and says, I want to place with a barbecue, they just won't show up, but they actually have it. And then we go in. Oh, yeah?
I just did this today. Not your report, but I just went and reviewed the amenities that I had missing. I just reviewed all the amenities because,
Then we're going to go into the reviews, right? And what's right, what's wrong, what are the reviews saying, what did your guests love, and all the changes that you can make. So it gives you at the end a score based on the thousands of listings that we have, and it places you on how good or how bad you are, because sometimes you don't know how good or how bad you are compared to others. So we have such a large database that we have put into ChatGPT, into our own GPT, that we can actually compare you to the others and say, this is how well or how bad. Typically, if anybody has a score of 85% or more, we said 2 thumbs up, you're doing great. If you're in the 70s or the 60s, there's clearly some low-hanging fruit and things that you can do to improve your listing.
That's solid. I mean, I think if you guys want to get that report for your listing, or you're struggling with listing, you should probably get that report over at myangelhost.com because it's a pretty solid report. It's good visuals on it, keeps people engaged, and it's very insightful. So that's pretty solid.
If you go to myangelhost.com
for sure
and click on resources, there's something called the Listing IQ, and then you just put your Airbnb link, and then it takes a few hours, and then you'll get your results.
That's even better, because if it takes a few hours, then you guys know it ain't bullshit.
Some things that someone from our team, some manual steps that our team has to do. So it's not just like letting the AI run and do whatever, right? It has to be verified by someone from our team before we send it over. So that's how it works.
Okay, so all you guys go do that and make Eduardo hire another employee, because he's too busy doing manual checks on all these reports for you guys all ordering them. So let's get him ordered.
Yeah, that's awesome. I put it on my to-do list to do for my personal STR, and then that's just tremendous value for you guys to go and use that free resource, and then you have human eyes looking over it, and it's just a free report, so you can definitely figure out what's going on with your listing and how to improve it and make it better. Man, I really appreciate you coming on. My favorite part of this episode was you sharing those insights with your company and those 4 to 5 things that people can take action on today. The one thing I want to add is if you don't have any kind of listing optimization or pricing structure, if you don't even use dynamic pricing at all, I think you should reach out to Eduardo and his team and figure out how you can set up a call and at least figure out, because there's definitely money being left on the table, and it's a very old school way to do business. And I think we're in a time now that there's not many people left doing that. But if you are, link up with him, and he can get you taken care of. But man, I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Some game for our listeners.
Yeah, I'll even say too, like as well, like even if you're co-hosting listings, or let's say you're charging a tech fee on your listings, I mean, maybe use that tech fee to get revenue management. I mean, the more money your client makes, the more money you make. So I mean, if he's making you 15 to 20% on average on every listing he takes, and 15 to 20%, you're making another 20% on top of that. So, I mean, it might be a no-brainer. I mean, depending on what the price is and how much money
And then
that place is making.
and that's the
So,
only way that we can be
I mean,
successful,
I'll just
Matt.
put
If
it
we
out
end
there.
up, charging the equivalent of like 1%, but we bring an extra 15, then it becomes a no-brainer. That's our goal as a company, right?
That's awesome. So if you could just, like Austin said, we appreciate you coming on, and just let everybody know where they can find you or get in contact with you. Anything else
No,
you want to
that's it.
share, and
Like I
then we'll
said,
just
like
wrap it up for the
anyone
day.
interested in that free analysis, head out to myangelhost.com, listing IQ, and yeah, I'll send you guys the presentation, and maybe you have a way of sharing it with the audience. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, really cool metrics. We spend quite a bit of time getting all this data, and it provides some very, very cool insights, for anybody interested.
I could pop it on a link probably on the website and put it in the show notes. Yeah, that's
Nice.
great. Well, thanks again, Eduardo. We really appreciate it. myangelhost.com. And I'll let Austin do his due,
Awesome.
and we'll talk to y'all next week.
Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all for listening. Peace.